Room service if I like, I order twice. Hibachi, got the gravy on the rice. Rolling in Mexico like a paradise.
And welcome on into the Q&A, the Steelers Q&A. Welcome aboard, everyone. My name is Andrew Wilbar, not typically the face that you would see. So Jeremy's internet just went out. He is going to be back in just a minute, so don't worry. He will be coming in. It's good to see everyone in tonight. We have plenty to talk about as it pertains to the black and gold and as it pertains to the NFL in general, as we are in championship week. And I'm looking forward to these couple games this week. I was a little bit bummed that my hometown Detroit Lions are not in this week after the Steelers are out. They were kind of my team I was pulling for. But I'm excited to see these games nonetheless. Jaden Daniels has been absolutely incredible. Going against Jalen Hurts, you have an NFC East rivalry. And then, of course, the same old in the AFC, right? You got Patrick Mahomes going against Josh Allen. Can't ask for a whole lot better than that. But before we get into any of it today, make sure that you are checking out everything at the Steel Curtain Network. Check out steelcurtainnetwork.com, fansfirstsports.com. We've got so much covered there. Not just everything that's going on right now in the NFL, but even things to come. As those of you that have listened to our shows before know that I cover the NFL draft at Steel Curtain Network and Fans First Sports, and we're rolling out NFL draft content. We have scouting reports coming. We have another mock draft that'll be coming out probably the second week of February as of right now, and we have much more to come. But we're looking forward to that. And looks like Jeremy is back with us. Jeremy, is that you?
I am back. I am so sorry. I don't know what happened. My internet just totally gave out on me as I'm trying to intro the show. So apologies, but thanks for holding it down for me, Andrew. I was going to introduce you.
Well, I'll introduce you, and now you can take it away.
Well, it's an interesting day for me. With this, we were just recording other podcasts today, and so it just happens sometimes with all of this stuff. But so I'm back. I'm here, and we're gonna get rolling with this. I'm sorry for the delay, and I'm sorry for the issue with getting started here. But yes, I do have my good buddy Andrew Wilbar. And if you're not tired of us from the Steelers Fix and the Draft Dynasty podcast, you get another run at us here tonight. And it won't be a long show. We'll have fun. We'll get some Steelers content rolled out here. Jeremy's still enjoying the natty, Gavin. I'm living it up over here. I've been every podcast basically until this one. I've been wearing my Ohio State gear just to drive Mr. Wilbar crazy and his team up north.
And we still won.
Even though they still beat us during the regular season. So I guess this podcast for us, between the two of us, it's a win-win. We get a natty. They still had the win over us. They had a natty last year, so it feels pretty good. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to talking on the Q&A tonight. I always enjoy the Q&A. It's always a lot of fun. We always get great questions, so I'm excited for it. Bring it to us tonight.
Yeah, load up with the questions. We're in that phase of the offseason where nobody's really paying attention to the Steelers right now because the NFL is still going on and the Steelers aren't a part of it. Even fans, even like myself, I've kind of peeled back, watching other games. I've been enjoying college football, but not really doing much with the Steelers outside of, Steel Curtain Network stuff and staying on top of things that way. But not a lot of news has come out from Steelers headquarters. Not a lot of, interesting updates. Not a lot of changes like we were all hoping for and expecting. And it's not been what we've wanted, right? So far. And I think that's maybe the talking point right now is Where's all the impact moves? Where's the changes that Mike Tomlin said they were going to undergo? And we have a lot of questions still.
If this remains status quo, maybe the Steelers are just being really, really patient with firings and releases and all of that. But we can go back and forth on Terrell Austin and whether or not he deserves to go or not. And maybe the Steelers really do need to add somebody, regardless of whether Austin stays or goes. You got to add another pass rush coordinator up front, something to mix it up front. And I think that even the defensive line, even though there were times where they were a little inconsistent this year, I still think that they're fine there. It really, though, if Pat Meyer comes back, to me, that is malpractice on Mike Tomlin. This is malpractice of the Steelers organization. He was never a good offensive line coach. He wasn't a good offensive line coach. But in Carolina, he wasn't a good offensive line coach ever. His philosophy does not even really work in the modern NFL. The Steelers need to move on. I don't know if Doug Peterson would want to come to Pittsburgh or not. I don't know if Mike Munchak would want to come back or not. But it cannot remain the status quo up front. He does not understand where you put the players. I think Isaac Seumalo would be better if you slid him to the other side of guard. And you had Daniels playing him. They were playing opposites. Even when Daniels was playing well, they were playing the opposite positions than what they were accustomed to. Broderick Jones. Thankfully, he played well toward the end of the season, even at right tackle, but imagine how much better he's going to be when you move him to the left side. That's where he's natural at. So just the decisions along the offensive line have been way too much. Steelers need to go a different direction on the offensive line. That's the biggest thing I'm waiting to see, but not sure I'm going to.
Yeah. And I just, we talked about it too, that, the philosophy of the Pittsburgh Steelers is behind the times. And when it comes to building, they build on the defensive side of the ball still. When it comes to coaching staffs, it's small coaching staffs, not a lot of different input coming in. It's a very close group, very closed group. You don't have a lot of the technological side of the game is still advancing in Pittsburgh. It's still behind. The analytics department is small. There's not as much of an emphasis put on those things. So when you start talking about fans wanting change and fans needing to see something that sparks a reinterest in moving forward, in being able to change for the better and to win in today's NFL, the Steelers aren't giving us a ton of hope. So I still think that there's a lot to do. And I 100% agree with you. The offensive line coach needs to go. Terrell Austin, you can make an argument why he should stay because of what he's done with the secondary and the young players there, but he definitely needs another voice in there when it comes to the pass rush and when it comes to, how to blitz and formulating those types of different things. It's just not his forte. He's not great at it. So the Steelers, I talked about this with Jeff on the Let's Ride podcast, that the Steelers need to, or maybe what they're trying to do, I guess, to improve and to change, it would be to add instead of necessarily subtract. So maybe they're out there adding, getting ready to add voices in, getting ready to add an assistant to Terrell Austin to help with the pass rush. Maybe somebody who can coordinate the passing game for Arthur Smith. Things like that can open things up. Mike Tomlin also needs to consider coaches that can help him with in-game management type things as well, where he struggles. So yeah, if they're going to speak about changes, we need to see something. So far we haven't, and it is pretty frustrating.
I 100% agree. I'm very intrigued just by even you look at the teams like the championship teams that are still in there. I think of Washington. I know that not every team can be that team that just makes that huge leap in 1 year. A lot has to do with the quarterback, but the job Dan Quinn did with that team, he wasn't going to put up with any more nonsense of just, we're going to make minor change here, minor change here. No, everything is okay. I have a plan. We're instilling this to the fullest extent. And in year one, can't complain with the results. I'm not the biggest fan of Cliff Kingsbury, but nobody can deny the fact that he did a good job playing to Jaden Daniels' strengths this year. And even though his offense really isn't the greatest NFL offense, in my opinion, he worked to the strengths of what he had to work with in that room and got the most out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to our first question of the day from Afton Forehead. Who's out there who can help us develop a draft quarterback shooting for drafting in 26? I like that. I think you want to avoid quarterback, a high-end quarterback in this draft in 2025 if you're the Steelers. I don't think anybody's finding the next superstar quarterback in this draft, but I do think that there are some intriguing options down the list a little bit that might be worth developing. But then in 2026, there is a real possibility that we get a couple, one or two guys who have superstar quarterback capabilities. And we'll get to that when we get there. But I think this is a valid question. Who do we trust? Who could be out there, Andrew, that we would like to see a part of this organization that we would trust to take the reins of a young quarterback and give them a chance in today's NFL?
Well, my philosophy on that would be it all stems down from the head coach more than anything. I don't care whether he's a defensive mind, he's an offensive mind, doesn't matter. Yeah, the fact that Dan Campbell is more of an offensive mind, I don't think it was necessarily just his own philosophy that made the offense run necessarily on a down-to-down basis. But he is still the one who gives the final word on what the allowances are and what permissions the offensive coordinator has and does not have. And with Mike Tomlin, we don't know what permissions these offensive coordinators have. They're running some things that they're not running the same things that they ran in other places. And the other guys that they're bringing in are just incompetent like Matt Canada. So
yeah,
in my opinion, what you do is you fire or trade Mike Tomlin and you bring in a guy like Joe Brady, who is a quarterback whisperer. He worked with Joe Burrow. He turned him into the quarterback he was in college. He goes to Carolina, and despite the fact that whole coaching staff and that whole situation kind of turned into a dumpster fire, he worked with both Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold that year, the years before they developed into something special. I know that Baker went with Sean McVay and Darnold goes to Kyle Shanahan. I'm not trying to take anything away from that, but Joe Brady had a fingerprint on him before either of them did.
Right.
And then he goes to Buffalo and takes Josh Allen to a level that Dorsey could not. So
yep.
If I'm the Steelers, I'm not afraid to hire Joe Brady, make him the one in charge. I don't think bringing in another coordinator that Tomlin chooses is going to be the answer. Tomlin's had plenty of opportunities to make the right decision at offensive coordinator, and it hasn't happened. So if your hope is in that, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but you're going to be in for a rude awakening. What the Steelers need to do is a complete revamp. It's time to go on from Mike Tomlin. I don't believe it's the offensive coordinator that's the issue. It's the coach that's the issue. And I know that you haven't had a chance to get an elite quarterback, and everyone's going to be like, oh, Drew Aller, he's the next Ben Roethlisberger. He's the 6'5", 235-pound guy. I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen. All the Penn State fans are going to be like, oh, this is our guy. The Steelers need to do whatever to get him. Whether it's Aller or somebody else, you need to have a system that works. And I don't think the Steelers will have a system that works unless you move on from Coach T.
Yeah, because I don't think he's going to change his philosophy on things. I don't think he's going to remove the conservative streaks that he gets in on offense. I don't believe that he's willing to jump outside the thought process that if we win the turnover battle and we play solid defense, then we're going to be in every game. Like I sit back and I look at it, and like I can sit here today after the Bears hired Ben Johnson. I'll ask you the question, but I know my answer. Who's going to be the more interesting team to watch next year, the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Chicago Bears?
Chicago Bears.
100%. Who's going to be even look at a team like, I don't know, like the Jaguars. They don't even have a head coach yet, but they've got Trevor Lawrence. They're looking at, a guy like Liam Cohen out of Tampa Bay. That's, maybe a bold choice potentially, but at least they're in the right ballpark, right? That I would say they'd be more interesting to see how things turn out, because you already know what the Steelers are going to look like. They're going to look like a solid team that's going to fight every week, that's going to win a few they shouldn't, lose a few they shouldn't, end up right around 500, a little bit above it, and be a one and done in the playoffs. And you can't say that for some of these other teams that are doing things the modern NFL way.
And one other thing, I understand coaching as well, but I think we mentioned this a little bit on the Steelers Fix this past week as well. The ownership has to take responsibility of it too. You look at a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, and you can be a part of, whatever, side you're on as to whether they're winning these games fairly or not winning them fairly. At the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes is an absolute stud at quarterback.
Mhm.
They got their quarterback, but the ownership at the top level invested in them. Let's not forget, they already had Alex Smith, who was playing at a pretty good level, even played at a better level once they drafted Mahomes. But Brett Veach, who wasn't even the GM at the time, you had John Dorsey. They collaborate. Veach is like, hey, there's this guy I really like. He goes to Dorsey, and they present this plan to the ownership. Okay, we have a quarterback we think has a chance to be an absolute legend. Let's do what it takes to go up. Let's move up 15 spots in the draft, even though we have a mid-level quarterback already. And let's go and draft him and pair him with Andy Reid, one of the best offensive geniuses of all time.
Yeah.
The ownership believed in it to the point to where they were willing to do whatever it took to get that elite guy. They found the system. They found everything aligned, from the head coach on to the offensive coordinator. Say what you want about Matt Nagy. He's innovative. He was a good head. He won more games for the Bears than Matt Eberflus did with less talent. So you have that aspect. And then a team like Atlanta, everyone was getting on him, including myself, for drafting Michael Penix after signing Kirk Cousins. But they knew that the quarterback position was that important. And even though I still don't think it was wise to draft two, like just commit to one, they realized, okay, Michael Penix may not be ready. We will do whatever it takes, even if it's going to an outrageous extreme. We're going to make sure we get this right. And that came from ownership. Ownership gives the approval. Ownership gets on board with it. And then after that, the coaching staff has to have the right system. It all comes together. So it's not just Tomlin, it's Rooney's as well. And if you're afraid of being bad for a year or two, I question how the Rooneys truly want to win, because the way the NFL is set up is not for you to be continuously good each year, or else you're never going to get over the hump. That's what the Steelers are at right now. Be bad for a year, reset your salary cap, bring on some bad contracts, get draft picks for that. And you can still field a somewhat competent team. At least you can be competitive in games, but still lose them without tanking. And then you have a chance to get some elite prospects. And then right after that, you're going to have a couple years with a ton of salary cap space. You can rebuild this team and take the team places. That's how you build in the modern era, unless you get a Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, which is not going to happen every single millennium.
Yeah, exactly. So the Steelers are in a place where there doesn't seem to be a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. But what we'll do in the second half of the show is we're going to see if there is a path. Is there a path under this current coaching administration? We'll answer that question here on in the second half of the show. Is there a path to getting to a championship Sunday again with Mike Tomlin heading things up? What would that path look like? We'll talk a little bit about that after the break. We'll answer some more of your questions. If you are listening live, we're not going anywhere. If you are listening on audio, stay tuned. We will be right back after this. And welcome back to the Steelers Q&A. It's Jeremy Betts and it's Andrew Wilbar joining me on this episode of the Q&A on a Thursday night. We appreciate everybody in the chat talking it up. Keep getting those questions into us. We're going to go for a little bit longer here. And but I've got one question for you, Andrew, that the title of the show, I think I can see a path for the Pittsburgh Steelers to get back to Championship Sunday under this current administration, which is Mike Tomlin, Art Rooney II, Omar Khan. I can see one path, and it's to me pretty cut and dry. I want to see if you can see a path, or if you think that the Mike Tomlin of it all is too much for them to get back to a championship Sunday.
Is it possible? Yes. I'm not sure I see the path right now. I think if you look at this team's needs, they have to get more around the quarterback. I think Fields is the best option the Steelers are going to have this year. You have to find a way to develop him a little bit more. If Fields plays to the level he did in Chicago when he was a top 12 quarterback in this league, absolutely the Steelers can be competitive.
Sure.
But you have a lot of competition in there. You have to, it's a culmination of getting another weapon to pair with George Pickens, fixing the offensive line, not necessarily personnel-wise, but putting them in the right positions to succeed. Just flop the offensive line 360, and you've got it, or 180, and that's what you need to happen on that offensive line virtually. And on the defensive side of the ball, you have to get more creative up front. The secondary is getting better. The front seven's getting worse. You got to find a way to balance that out a little bit. And the Steelers can do all of those things. I think that there's a way the Steelers can compete. But when you're looking over the fence to even in-house a team like Baltimore inside the division, man, how are you going to stop Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry? The Steelers didn't figure that out. They found a way to stop one of them. Now the Steelers can't stop both of them. They lost 2 of 3 matchups this year to them. Yep. And there's so many questions. I'm just not sure if the Steelers are to that point yet. Could enough things go right, and could all these teams suffer a bunch of injuries and not be as good as what they were this year? Sure. But I believe there's too many issues underneath the head coach that the head coach ultimately falls on the head coach, but there's too many shortcomings, not just in personnel. I think personnel overall is decent, but especially on the coaching staff, to where I just don't see that path right now. It could happen with another good draft. This front office has done a great job of putting talent on the field. Unlike what the media is saying, they deserve a lot of credit. I'm just not sure I see that yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so my look at this, my idea on this is that the only path the Steelers have to getting back into championship contention under Mike Tomlin is if they re-sign Justin Fields and he as the guy in the Arthur Smith system, who Arthur is building the offense around. Not Russell Wilson, and with Justin Fields as the backup, but Justin Fields is their guy for 2025. If he steps up and reaches his potential, that's the only way I see the Steelers being competitive for another championship before Mike Tomlin's contract runs out at the end of 2026. So it's a very narrow margin here for the Steelers. And I guess the only other way is if you somehow stumble onto somebody, drafting somebody in the middle rounds, but it has to come from the quarterback, in my opinion. It's not going to come from the coaching staff. Ben Johnson in his press conference as the newest head coach of the Bears, he said that analytics show that quarterback success is the defining factor in wins and losses. It's no longer turnover margin. It's not, time of possession. It's quarterback success rate. It's quarterback efficiency. And if the Steelers want to move into the modern era of football, they need to have a quarterback who elevates the entire team around him. And Justin Fields has the skill set to do that if somebody can put that together. And if, there's a shot, in my opinion, that if Arthur Smith can work with this guy for a full off season, he's still young, 26 years old at the start of the 2025 season, that they have a shot. But if that doesn't work out, then the Steelers are still stuck in quarterback purgatory. And I don't see a way out of it until you tank, until you lose a bunch of games. And I just don't know if the Steelers are going to do that in the Mike Tomlin era. So that is my take on that. Let's go answer a couple more questions here. Let's see. One from Vinny Aguakun. Vinny asks, should we ask Minka for a pay cut if you told him we are going to invest in the offense? What do you think about this, Andrew? Does Minka need to consider this to stay in Pittsburgh?
I don't know. Yes, I do think he regressed a tiny bit this past season, but the Steelers need to do a better job of putting a little bit less on his plate. They have to understand where he's at in his career right now. Maybe letting him roam a little bit more freely than what he did and have a little bit more independence in the secondary than what he did this past season. I do think I'm not saying that he is overpaid, but it is concerning when you look at that contract and the level of play that he's giving you. I don't think for a guy like Minka that you necessarily ask him to take a pay cut, because my position on that would be, if you were to put Minka Fitzpatrick on the trade block, you're still going to get something pretty decent for him. Before I were to ask a guy like him who's done as much as he has for the Steelers on defense over the last few years, before I would ask him to take a pay cut, I would give him the opportunity saying, hey, we want to invest in the offense. If you would like an opportunity to go elsewhere, we are willing to let you explore that. As much as we would like you to stay in Pittsburgh, I'm not going to ask Minka for a pay cut without giving him an opportunity to search a trade if he wants to go elsewhere. That's the respectful thing to do to me. for what he has done for this organization. Same thing could be said for Cam Hayward, for TJ Watt. I don't think you're asking those guys to take a pay cut, especially the way that they're still playing. But for the sake of the question, I would say if I'm asking him for a pay cut, I'm giving him the freedom to also look for a trade if that's what he desires.
Yeah, Derpy Entertainment brings that up. He says, I think the first thing the Steelers need to do is question the trade value for TJ, Minka, and Cam. Their age is concerning. So in that camp, I would say, and just last year, this was blasphemy to say trade TJ specifically or Minka or Cam. I think you keep Cam for the duration. I think that he's a guy who is just a Steeler. Let him finish out his career in Pittsburgh. I would love that for TJ Watt as well. But again, there comes a point where you got to make a decision. With guys that aren't on their rookie contracts anymore. And TJ is going to be 32 this next year. So, or excuse me, 31 this next year. So his age is getting up there. Minka is a little bit younger, but he's going to be getting up there into his 30s here soon. So both of those guys, to me, you just put some feelers out at least. I mean, Andrew, would you take 2 firsts for TJ Watt at this point in his career? I mean, would you consider trading him? That's just a tough one to me. I don't know if you can do that if you're Mike Tomlin. It would have to be whoever comes in next. But I don't know. Is that the right move for the Steelers?
I haven't looked at the 2026 draft order in terms of if anyone has multiple first-round picks. If it was the same team offering 2 first-round picks in 2026, I would say yes. Because that draft is much deeper. 2027, you could argue, is even better. I don't want a first-round pick in this draft. If I get 2 first-round picks in a future draft, as much as I love TJ, and I would love to see him retire a Steeler, I absolutely would love it. I do not want to see him gone. I don't want to mince words here, but you have to get the quarterback. The Steelers have not had a quarterback, but they've had TJ Watt, and they haven't been able to get anywhere. And like we talked about in the first half of the show, quarterback is not the only problem. The Steelers, I think, have a good quarterback in Justin Fields they could potentially win with if everything else was right around them. But again, quarterback covers a multitude of sins. If you get that elite quarterback, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about as problems doesn't matter and nobody cares about because you're going to win anyways if you have an elite guy. And if the Steelers have those 2 first-round picks, no matter where the Steelers are picking, you can move up pretty much as not quite as necessarily as high as you want, but you have a lot of flexibility to get into that top 5 of the draft and kind of get your pick of an elite blue chip prospect. And I think that's more likely to give the Steelers a Super Bowl ring than anything TJ Watt could do. TJ Watt's already played an MVP level type campaign the past couple seasons in Pittsburgh, and it still hasn't been enough to get the Steelers over the hump. So based on value, I would definitely consider it, as much as I hate to say that. He's the best defensive player in football, one of the best in all of football, first ballot Hall of Famer for sure. But man, it's hard. Yeah,
it really is. It'll be interesting to see how the Steelers handle it. Afton asks, are there any free agents you would jump on right away? I've got one that just pops into my head every time I hear the conversation. And to me, that's T. Higgins from Cincinnati. He's a wide receiver 1 in this league. You can't tell me otherwise after what he does with Joe Burrow. He would give the Steelers a chance to move on gracefully from George Pickens after this year if they decide that they need to do that. Because Higgins could get the big contract that you're not going to give Pickens, and you're going to get the same type of player, but without the issues, without the attitude issues. So he's a guy that comes to mind. I'm thinking offense mostly here, but wide receiver. I also think, a guy like Chris Godwin. He's still only 28 years old. He'll be 29 for this next season. I would love a Chris Godwin, somebody who can run routes in the middle of the field and kind of be a security blanket, but also has some explosiveness still. No, he's coming off an injury, but he's a guy who I think would be fun. Anybody that stands out to you, Andrew, that you would like to see the Steelers grab?
Well, another receiver that I think would be a little bit more affordable would be Amari Cooper. I think he would be a good fit in Pittsburgh, and I think he's still a low-end 1 in this league, and that's exactly what the Steelers need with George Pickens. You'd have a true 1A, 1B there with Pickens and then Cooper. One guy, again, I always like finding the gems and the values, but I can't help but look at Chase Young and see what he could do in Pittsburgh. I really think he has some untapped potential still in this league.
Yeah.
I would love to see the Steelers get their hands on a guy like Chase Young.
That'd be fun. That'd be a lot of fun. Let's see here. I was just looking at him. Where'd he go? I can't find him right now. It was a corner. Oh, DJ Reed. I'd love to get DJ Reed in Pittsburgh because he's got some versatility inside and out. Played for a Jets team that has been good on defense. Played opposite Sauce Gardner over there. He's a guy who I think whose value would not be super high, who could come in and be your CB2, something along those lines, and give you some good value. Move on from Dante Jackson and bring in a guy like DJ Reed, who I think would be an upgrade on Jackson. So he's somebody that I would say like on the defensive side of the ball. But let's bring up this question here. Personalities aside, from George T. Personalities aside, Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson? Andrew, you got an answer for this one?
Yeah, I would say Aaron Rodgers because
yes, thank you.
because maybe this fits too much in with personality or not, but Aaron Rodgers, I'm not even saying from his personality, but just his football acumen is if your play calling is stupid, I don't care. I'm going to run the offense the way I'm going to run it. And I understand that kind of goes in the way of personality, but I'm thinking just, drama aside, I would definitely take Aaron Rodgers, but there's really no scenario I would take Russell Wilson at this point. Is he still one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL? Yes, because there's not that many great quarterbacks in the NFL right now. But is he a quarterback that I see winning a Super Bowl? No.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how you could see what Russ did down the stretch and yeah, the Jets stunk it up, but that's a team that up to the top of the organization, they are just moribund. They are embattled every season. If I were Aaron Glenn, I would not have gone to the Jets. I know he is a former Jet, but that's just a tough situation waiting to happen. Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback that you would pick out of these two. He throws over the middle of the field. He makes all the throws all over the field. He's got some pocket mobility still, which is all you were getting from Russell Wilson anyway. And this guy will use the whole field. So he would be, if I had to lay personalities aside, he would be my pick there as well.
Well, I want to ask one thing because I saw this one in the live chat. Mark Tobin was asking AJ Dillon for running back or fullback. Here's another option. You don't bring back Najee Harris. I understand the running back class is so deep. We were talking about this on Draft Dynasty. Every NFL team could draft a running back this year, and you would still have running backs going undrafted that have draftable grades. There are 35 to 40 running backs you could argue in this draft deserve to be drafted, and not all of them are going to. So I still would say the top option would be to go the way of the draft for a running back, but if you're going to go free agent, why not 29-year-old Nick Chubb, who's going to be affordable after being off an injury? I would still take that type of Nick Chubb over Najee Harris.
Yeah, I would too. That's a very good one. I like it. I like it a lot. Gavin Anthony asked which receiver free agents would want to come here. I worried they will want to. I don't know if he finished his sentence there, but which receiver free agents would want to come there to Pittsburgh? I think that depends on the quarterback you get. But also, for the most part, free agents are just looking for the bag, right? So if the Steelers are willing to pay the most, they could probably get whoever they wanted to. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. It all comes down to money with receivers. What happened with Tyreek Hill? He did not go to Miami to win a championship. He went to get his money. What could potentially happen this offseason to T. Higgins? He's in a position right now, if he truly wants to win a championship, he's with an elite quarterback. If he wants to come back, he could take a small pay cut. Since he would still pay him pretty well, but not top of the line money. He's going in free agency because he wants to be a top end of the line receiver as it pertains to the financial aspect. If receivers want money and money talks, if the Steelers pay enough money for an elite receiver on the open market, whether it be Chris Godwin, T. Higgins, whatever, they can bring them in. Receivers is the one position it's like they don't even care about winning a lot of the times. They just want what's in it for them. That's just the diva mentality of wide receiver. I'm not trying to diss all of them, but 99% of your receivers are going to go for the money. I don't think the Steelers would have any issue bringing in a receiver free agent.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they'll have any issue with that, especially if they get, I mean, Arthur Smith is respected in the league. He is. He's just a guy who, I mean, even after this year, is still getting head coach interviews. I mean, that's respect in the league, and he's gonna command that too. I think if they just get something that lives and breathes at quarterback that has some potential, Justin Fields say, then they're gonna get some kind of wide receiver that'll be fine. What about Stephon Diggs? What do you think about him?
I wouldn't be opposed to him depending on the price. He's a little bit of a headache to deal with, but I think he's been humbled after this past season with his injury and everything else. I think that might humble him a little bit. He's going to be on the cheap. I don't anticipate him getting a huge deal. No team's going to expect him to be more than a 2 at this point in his career. So I would be okay with that. I would still probably prefer Cooper, but he's a little bit more mature veteran to bring into a room that has George Pickens in it. That is why I'm more attracted to a guy like Amari Cooper. He's a pro's pro, and I would have no issues with him grooming a guy like Pickens off the field. Whereas with Diggs, you're kind of, throwing gasoline on the fire per se in the receiver room. I'm not sure if that's the way you want to go.
Yeah. Cooper's younger than Diggs too, which kind of feels hard to believe. Cooper feels like he's been in the league for forever.
I know. I remember when he was in college, and it feels like I was like 5.
Yep, absolutely. Here's a good one. Is Garrett Wilson a trade realistic? Would you give up this year's first for him? From John S. What do you say?
No. Garrett Wilson's good, but would he be better than, say, Luther Burden where he's at right now? Maybe, but I don't think that you're trading your first-round pick straight up for Garrett Wilson. I don't think the Jets are doing that. They're not going to give up on him that easy just because the numbers were not great. They know what he's capable of. The whole league sees what he's capable of. They have to find the quarterback. I don't see that happening, and I really wouldn't at all. I'm not a big fan of trading for wide receivers because that would be something you would do if you feel like you were one receiver away from getting to a championship, and the Steelers are not at that position. The Steelers did not come short in that playoff game because they didn't have anything else besides George Pickens. The defense let them down. Yes, they need another receiver, but there's more issues than just that, and the Steelers have to fix all those other issues. Trading a first-round pick for a receiver that's going to be getting paid here real soon, not the way I would go.
The one thing I'll say, Andrew, because I 100% agree with you, but I don't think the Steelers view themselves that way. Mike Tomlin and that regime feel like that they can reset every year with a team that can compete for a championship. And they're wrong. Every year they're a team that can compete for a playoff spot, but that's been the ceiling. So, as they say, if you make the dance, you have a chance to go all the way. That's living on the edge of your seat a little too much, flying by the seat of your pants a little too much for my liking. So I agree with you totally. I just don't think the Steelers would view it that way. So I wouldn't be surprised if they made a bigger move like that, just because they think that they are one or two pieces away.
Intellectuals give themselves false hope. We've talked about that the last time I was on the Q&A about Mike Tomlin, and sometimes they think that they're in a little bit better position than what they really are. I would like to bring up, though, real quick, when John S. was asking about the Draft Dynasty on SEN. So if you go to the Fans First Sports Network feed, which is the mother of all this, make sure you go and check that out. You can find the call sheet over there. You can find many different great shows on the Fans First feed as well. But we come out every Friday, Jeremy and myself. Each week from now until the draft, we're going to be talking draft. Once draft is done, we shift focus to fantasy football and everything draft. What is your slogan for that? For fantasy or for real?
Yeah, if it's fantasy or for real, we've got you covered on the Draft Dynasty podcast.
So check out the
all
Fans
draft
First
all the time. Yep, FFSN NFL feed, wherever you get your podcast. Absolutely. Thanks to all who tuned in for this episode. We appreciate you. Thank you, Andrew, for covering for me at the beginning of this one. It was a little rocky, and thanks for joining me. Any final things you want to say to the crowd before we head out?
Keep checking out our shows. Obviously, Steelers Fix and Draft Dynasty. Big one we're honing in right now, obviously, with the NFL Draft coming up. I've got scouting reports coming up. I've done about 25 or 30 for the website so far, and we'll have more coming whenever my schedule can fit it in. Goal is to at least have 100 of those top prospects for you guys. I do have one interesting guy I'm going to mention, just for the sake of the Senior Bowl, since that's coming up. Keep an eye on the CFL prospect, Taylor Algersma. He is from I don't remember what the name of it was where he played, but he played high level D3 ball, and then he was a Canadian quarterback. I can't remember the name. It started with an L. Weird one, but he's 6'4", 213 pounds. He's got a good arm. There's some intriguing traits. He is at the Senior Bowl. You got all these big name guys like Riley Leonard and all these quarterbacks you've seen in college football. You've never seen this guy before. Keep an eye on him. He could be the saving grace for this quarterback class.
That's interesting. Very interesting. We will keep the intrigue up and keep an eye on it all here. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you all. Have a great night. Steelers fans, tune in next time, and we'll be back in 1 week from today. We'll see you then.